go for launch.
5.
Quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting. Anything can happen in the next half hour.
4.
My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
This whole thing is insane.
3.
Quiet, please. I am analyzing.
Where's the kaboom?
2.
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
1.
Heavily armored black helicopters spin through the sky in a dance of death. Their target, one man in a flying arsenal that fits in 2 alligator suitcases. The odds, 4 to 1. They haven't got a chance.
I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond. Just a drink. A martini, shaken, not stirred. I think you got the point.
Beg your pardon? Forgot to knock.
Welcome to hell, Blofeld.
Who are you?
My name is Pussy Galore.
I must be dreaming.
It's a matter of life. It's a matter of death. It's a matter of a beautiful Italian spy, 7 killers, a voodoo witch doctor, a living corpse, a gorgeous double agent, 12 cars, 5 planes, 10 acres of land, a wedding reception, a double-decker bus, a fleet of speedboats, a sea of crocodiles, the beautiful sorceress named Solitaire, the man with the steel arm, and a retired Navy LST. All against one man.
It's a Smith & Wesson. And you've had your 6.
I trust you can handle this contraption, Q.
It goes by hot air.
Oh, then you can.
That's not funny, 007.
Look up, look down, look out! Here comes the biggest Bond of all.
Greetings, my fellow galactic travelers, and welcome back to Planet 8. This is your mission commander Larry speaking to you from our hidden base. Chief Engineer Bob is here by my side as always in the command center, and circling Planet 8 in our orbital spy satellite is Reconnaissance Officer Karen.
And on this episode of Planet 8, we're going to be talking about spies. Not spies in general, but the first spy, maybe the best spy, 007, James Bond. Straight away, let's kick it over to Chief Engineer Bob. Give us a little start here. Bob, what do you have to say about 007?
Well, I love James Bond. I will say that without reservation. In fact, I think in a previous episode way back, we were talking about what we would be collecting if we didn't collect what we currently collect. And I think my answer was Bond. Mm-hmm. You know, I have a small shelf of Bond stuff, but, you know, if I wasn't spending all my money on Godzilla and Ultraman and monsters and whatever, I probably would have a whole room full of Bond stuff. But, James Bond was created by Ian Fleming. And Ian Fleming basically wrote his first Bond novel in 1952, and that was Casino Royale. And interestingly enough, well, just a little bit on Ian Fleming's background. In World War II, he was the assistant to the head of naval intelligence in Britain. And that's where he got his whole background for the MI6 and spies and Bond and the whole thing, basically from personal experience. Not that he went out in the field and did all the things that Bond does. He didn't have a license to kill, but he was more kind of administrative. But he did see how things worked and people come and go and new agents and things like that. So he had basically a very good background. Plus, in his college days, university days, he would gamble, he would fraternize with women, and he was basically Bond. So when he wrote his first novel, which was Casino Royale, he was basically pulling on all of his experiences. And then, do you guys know where the name James Bond came from?
No.
I do not.
Really? Well, Ian Fleming was looking for the perfect name for his secret agent. And there was a book on his shelf on ornithology. So basically a bird watching book talking about different species of birds. And the author of the book was James Bond. And so he pulled that name off that book, and that author became legendary as James Bond. In fact, I think they talked to that author at one point and asked him about how he felt, and he was just didn't want to talk about it. But
you should be flattered.
That was his namesake. So the interesting thing is everybody thinks that 1962 Dr. No was the first movie, but there was actually CBS, Climax Theater, back in 1954, did a TV special on Casino Royale. So they bought the rights to Casino Royale and James Bond. And it was Barry Nelson played American agent Jimmy Bond. They changed things up a bit. And Le Chiffre, the main villain, was Peter Lorre. So, that was an old black and white. Yeah, I think you can find like kinescope versions of it, probably on YouTube or somewhere. I have a DVD of it. It's pretty interesting. You know, it basically focuses on the card games and that. And but it was very interesting. But that's also why when Eon Productions got the rights to Bond in 1962 and they kicked it off with Dr. No, they had the rights to every novel except Casino Royale. And there was a guy by the name of Charles Feldman who got the rights from Casino Royale from CBS. And he was trying to work with Eon Productions to make a Bond film out of it. And Eon really wasn't interested because, you know, they completely owned the other novels. They had plenty to pull from at that point. So he went off. He basically went to MGM and did the 1967 James Bond spoof Casino Royale. And it wasn't until 1999 when Eon Productions finally got the rights to Casino Royale. Then they started working on that, and that kicked off the whole Daniel Craig era with Casino Royale in 2006. But that's why they couldn't do that until then. But yes, the first official Eon Productions Bond film was Dr. No, starring Sean Connery. And I know they went through a lot of different actors, even like Cary Grant and others, to pick the right Bond. And it was actually Cubby Broccoli's wife who said, "Hey, look at this guy over here in Darby O'Gill and the Little People." And he saw Sean Connery in that. And, that was kind of a musical. It definitely wasn't typical James Bond, but I guess he had the look that Broccoli was looking for. And so he brought him in, and he became Bond in Dr. No.
Interesting. And, as we're recording this, Sean Connery has recently passed away, so God rest his soul, and thank you, Mr. Connery, for all the roles, Darby O'Gill, and especially James Bond.
And Zardoz.
And of course, Zardoz. And Outland. And actually, between Zardoz and Outland and a few others, we could actually do a non-Bond Connery episode at some point.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and Indiana Jones's father.
That's right. Shawné.
Oh, gosh. What was the Time Bandits?
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Well, I see an episode coming up. But anyway, today we talk Bond.
And not
just Connery Bond. We'll cover everything.
Well, we're going to cover most. We're gonna kind of take a look at some of our personal favorites, and I'll work our way. You know, I'm not sure if it'll go in a chronological order, or we're just going to kind of jump around as we often do on Planet 8.
Helter Skelter.
Helter Skelter. My personal favorite, and I wasn't sure, we were talking, before we were recording, how many films there were. I thought there were like 30, but there's like a 24, 25, did you say?
Well, 25 would be the new one.
Okay.
No Time to Die. But that does not include Casino Royale or the Connery Never Say Never Again, which has a whole history behind that.
Yeah. My personal favorite is, I guess we could do top 3, but my absolute favorite is From Russia with Love. I just, for some reason, love the way that thing played out. I mean, it had everything. It had the Lecter, it had gypsies, it had spies, it had shootouts. It was just a lot of fun for me. And traveling by rail to me is very, I can't think of the word. It's a very classic film style of travel, at least for that period of time. It was very romantic, and the evil guy trying to get at Bond, I can't think of his name, but playing off, I say, chap, well, what about this? Oh, well, I don't know.
That was Grant. And that was really kind of groundbreaking in that movie, the fact that they had this epic fight in a railway room, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because it's such confined quarters, and he and Grant are just going at it. And yeah, it was. They guess they did it again in Diamonds Are Forever, where he has the fight in the elevator. But just to have a close quarter fight, I don't think that had really been done before.
Right. Live and Let Die, they fought in a rail car as well. That was Roger Moore.
That's true.
But, the whole, and I'm not, I like.
Or no, that was Spy Who Loved Me, because he was fighting Jaws in the rail car.
Oh, that's right. Spy.
Well, in Live and Let Die, though, he was fighting Teehee, the guy with the pincher arm.
Yeah, he threw him out the window, right?
Yeah,
because his arm is stuck on the window, and Bond has to.
Right, the claw. But with the more modern films, you got the lasers and the satellites and everything. There was just something to me about flipping the switch on a briefcase, and letting the gas loose, and I don't know, it works for me. What about you, Karen? What if you were to nail it down to like your top 3 or one of your favorite, more memorable Bond films, do you have one?
Well, I mean, the first Bond film I remember seeing, and it would have been on TV, was Live and Let Die. And that was just, it was very 70s. It had the Paul McCartney theme song, which was, classic. And it's funny because now I look at Roger Moore's performances, especially the later ones. The first couple of movies, he was not too bad, but later on he was always kind of winking at the camera, and it was very, very corny. But I have a fondness for that one just because of, it was my first, and it's still not too goofy. They're trying to do sort of a blaxploitation and a Bond movie, which is kind of weird. But it's I don't know, it's enjoyable to me, although I recognize it's maybe not the best Bond film ever. I think really when I think of like Bond, now after having seen all of them, I feel like Connery was probably the best. And we can get into all the different characteristics of the different actors later on, but it's weird kind of watching those 60s ones, though, because there is a lot of sexism and stuff that's a little hard to get past, just like a lot of 60s movies. But he's just so like brutal and ruthless and everything, and his determination to get things done. So he's in some ways seems the most effective. And I like Goldfinger a lot. I think that's a really good one. And of course, it's got the whole classic thing like, do you expect me to beg? No, I expect you to die. And, all that stuff. So I like that one an awful lot.
What about you, Chief?
Well, it's hard for me to like pinpoint one movie. I mean, Live and Let Die was the first one I saw in the theater.
Well, and let me just say, Bob gets the no prize for having watched the most Bond movies prepping for this episode. So kudos.
Well, I made it all the way up through Tomorrow Never Dies. So halfway through the Brosnan era. But no, I think, like I say, Live and Let Die has a certain place in my heart just because it's the first one I saw in the theaters. And subsequently, every Bond since then I have seen in initial release in theaters. But I do have to give a big nod to Goldfinger. I think that was kind of the gold standard of the Bond films. I just love Gert Frobe as Goldfinger. And do you realize that Gert Frobe could not speak English?
Yeah, they dubbed him, right?
He basically did it all phonetically, and then they dubbed his voice. In fact, most of the Bond girls in the 60s were all dubbed. A lot of them were by the same woman. I can't recall her name, but yeah, it was. They did a lot of dubbing in those films, but Sean Connery was never dubbed for sure.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, if I kind of go through real quick, I mean, Goldfinger definitely. As far as Roger Moore goes, I think Spy Who Loved Me was kind of his peak. Even though I did like Live and Let Die and also like For Your Eyes Only. Oh, George Lazenby, of course, my favorite Lazenby film would be On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Timothy Dalton, I love License to Kill, and I really wish he had more Bond films.
He was pretty good.
He was the closest Bond to the novels. And he was a Shakespearean actor, and he's probably out of all the Bond actors, he was probably the best at acting. And then Pierce Brosnan, well, I really like Tomorrow Never Dies because, I watched Michelle Yeoh in countless Hong Kong action movies, and to see her in a Bond film was very cool. And then Daniel Craig, it's got to be Casino Royale, because that was, out of all the Bond films ever made, that was the closest to the original novel.
Every time you say Casino Royale, I can't help but think.
Yeah, yes. Well, I didn't say my favorite, like David Niven Bond film or whatever. But.
Well, I appreciate and I love Goldfinger as well. But I am a huge fan of the Woody Allen, David Niven Casino Royale. It's just so unbond. It's like, other than the name, and Bob was joking around, there's like 1,000 different directors on the thing.
There are. I just looked it up. They had 6 different directors and like 11 writers.
Yeah,
and it's like, come on. Yeah. We complain about Justice League and the fact that Joss Whedon took over from Snyder, but it's like, this was like Justice League times 6 or something, because it's like, I think it was like Peter Sellers kept firing directors and others would come in, and Peter Sellers was having marital problems with Britt Eklund at the time, and he wasn't in the greatest mood making that film. So yeah, he was like firing directors left and right.
Until he got fired.
Yeah, but I mean, he was in pretty much the whole movie though.
Yeah. I had said, whenever you have cowboys and Indians jumping out of parachuting out of an airplane, I'm sold. Yeah.
That's your measure for quality.
Hey, we all have our standards. Like I said, I'll be doing that all day now. I'm going to drive Jasmine insane.
Well, that's definitely a classic earworm. Whenever I hear it, it'll get stuck in my head for days.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys, Bob. You talked about George Lazenby, and he has the distinction. Lazenby. Sorry, Lazenby. Lazenby.
There you go.
The only actor that ever played Bond once, other than David Niven and Peter Sellers, but
and Barry Nelson.
I like that movie as well, and Telly Savalas, what a great actor.
No, I loved, and that's another theme song too. That it was the only other instrumental Bond theme song other than Dr. No, which used the original Bond theme. Mm-hmm. And From Russia with Love was an instrumental, but there was words to it, which they sang, I think, over the end credits. But
yeah,
but no, I think On Her Majesty's Secret Service was definitely a good Bond film. And I like Dalton. I think Lazenby should have gotten another shot or two at Bond.
Well, just think about what that guy was going through, having been cast in that role, because Connery left he fulfilled his contractual, obligation, and whatever discussions were had or not had or fell through or didn't come about, Connery was moving on. And so they did this search for the next Bond. I'll call him George since I butcher his last name. He's Australian, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Australian. And so he's a tall, handsome, debonair, good actor. What happened? Why was there never a second outing for him?
I don't know. His arms were long, too, because when he had those fights, he had those big roundhouse punches and things. He was basically a pretty brutal Bond as far as the fight scenes go. There's various stories about why he didn't come back after that film. One, I guess, it was that his agent was trying to negotiate for way more money than they were willing to pay. Mm-hmm. He says that he just really didn't want to get typecast in the role, and he quit. Eon has their own stories, but whatever happened, they basically went back and got Sean Connery to come back for Diamonds Are Forever for one more try.
One more time.
Before Roger Moore came in. Now, Roger Moore was in The Saint TV series. So he went from The Saint, he went to The Persuaders, which he was in with Tony Curtis. Great series. If you get a chance, definitely watch The Persuaders. The two of them have like the perfect chemistry. But yeah, after that, then they brought him on as Bond.
Yeah, Live and Let Die was also the first film that I saw in a movie theater, Bond film. I haven't seen them all since then in movie theaters, but I remember, I was a young kid. I was like 6 or 7 years old, went with my parents, and I was blown away, man. The voodoo and, the sharks in the tank and
alligators.
Yeah. And, the alligators, man, that was cool, too.
Names is for tombstones, baby.
He and I guess it was intentional, but Roger Moore became more kind of tongue-in-cheek in the Bond role in the later films, and that kind of, something like that'll work in a Laurel and Hardy film, but not so much in a Bond movie, at least for me.
Well, it's like Live and Let Die was written before they had a Bond. Yeah, they were between Bonds, and they wrote the story. They had it ready to go, and then Roger Moore came in. So subsequent films after that, Man with a Golden Gun, Spy Who Loved Me, For Your Eyes Only, Octopussy, View to a Kill, and Moonraker, if you want to talk about our least favorite. But those were more tailored towards Roger Moore, and he wanted a more lighthearted approach. In fact, he wasn't really happy with For Your Eyes Only because it was more brutal. And his Bond had a softer side.
Yeah. And I will say, too, with Live and Let Die, that was like the first kind of like rock and roll kind of like faster theme in the Bond series. I mean, up to that we had, obviously Goldfinger and
Thunderball. Tom Jones, Thunderball.
Tom Jones. But, it was I don't know. It's one of those unique theme songs. I have the CD here somewhere, and it has all the theme songs, and then it has the James Bond variations of the dang 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 dang.
Well, yeah. The interesting thing about Live and Let Die is the soundtrack was done by George Martin.
Huh.
And so that's how Paul McCartney got involved doing the theme song. All the background music was written by George Martin.
Huh. Very cool. So, so Roger Moore gets started in Live and Let Die, and so I'm going to jump straight to, why is Moonraker not one of your favorite Bond movies, Bob?
Well, that was kind of the epitome of silliness in the Roger Moore era. Star Wars was big, so they wanted to send Bond off into space and all that. Right. Jaws was, he was fairly humorous to a point in Spy Who Loved Me, but he had his love interest, and he was, just over the top. Everything was just over the top, overblown, which is why I like For Your Eyes Only, because it brought Bond, no pun intended, down to earth and back to basics, and it was more of a James Bond type film. I don't even look at Moonraker as being a Bond film. It's totally the novel is totally different. It's basically Moonraker in name only, I guess.
That's interesting. What adventure was had in the novel? He didn't go up into space, I guess?
I haven't read that novel since probably high school.
Okay.
But it's just, I read all the Bond books, and again, that was like years and years ago. I should probably revisit them again. But Ian Fleming had a way, they call it like the Fleming sweep, where it kind of sweeps you from chapter to chapter, and it's like, you start reading the book, you can't put it down because it just keeps on going. But all his novels, were very good. But some probably wouldn't translate well to movies. But I just, Moonraker. I just hated it from day one. That's probably the only Bond film that I hate. But
no, I hear you. What do you have to say about Moonraker, Karen?
Oh, honestly, I'm not as big a 007 buff, so I don't have a whole lot of thought on the matter, to be honest.
Did you see me?
Well, yeah, I've seen pretty much all of these at least once. It's just my thought in general was that the more ones, like Bob said, they got progressively sillier to the point where it was almost infuriating because he'd just like wink at the camera and stuff. And it was just like, come on, I just felt like he wasn't even trying at a certain point.
Well, if you look at like Octopussy and View to a Kill, he was basically way too old for the role at that point. And I think Roger Moore actually backed out because he's like, I'm James Bond and I'm old, and the women that I'm seducing are like, a third my age or something. It's like, it wasn't working.
She knew my granddaughter, man. Not just my daughter, my granddaughter. It's a very poor Roger Moore accent on my part. Sorry.
Oh, God. Was that what that was?
I gotta say, Moonraker is not my favorite Bond film, but I found it amusing. The space shootout to me was like the underwater shootout with those little water sleds that they had. I don't know. Just me.
Yeah, those underwater scenes in Thunderball, those were all directed by Rico Browning.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
Creature from the Black Lagoon connection.
Nice. I too am not a huge Bond aficionado, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it. So this is very educational and cool talking with Bob here about this.
Well, the only other thing I'll throw out there is Derek Meddings, who did the special effects from I think it was from like You Only Live Twice through, I want to say, GoldenEye. But he cut his teeth on, he was doing the effects for the Jerry Anderson puppet shows, Super Marination shows. Thunderbirds and Stingray and Captain Scarlet and all that.
That makes sense.
That, wow. Well, yeah, and, no wonder it felt familiar, watching those marionette programs, and, then, Bond movie would be on the 3:30 movie or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay. You just kind of feel comfortable in that universe.
Well, you just kind of think, oh, they're both British, so, But yeah, no, it was the Derek Meddings connection. In fact, I think it was, I want to say either GoldenEye or License to Kill, where at the end it says, dedicated to Derek Meddings, because that's when he had passed away.
That's cool. That they dedicated it to him, not that he passed away.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Another favorite of mine is The Man with the Golden Gun.
Scaramanga. The man with 3 nipples.
Now, Bob, why? Well, I wonder if that was in the book or not. What
I believe it was in the book.
And Karen, do you have anything to say about a 3-nippled man, or?
There's very little I would want to say about that.
I love the film for the fact. I mean, Hervé Villechaize is in it, does a great job. And it's funny, the difference between Oddjob and his character, the guy, so Oddjob is tall and you got little Hervé coming in there just as deadly, if not more so. But then again, I have a certain aversion to short people, so maybe that kind of played on the psychology of how dangerous he was.
Well, the thing about him is that in the movie, he doesn't seem to be on anybody's side.
His own.
Yeah, because he's controlling all the switches and buttons and levers that are controlling all the things in the fun house, for lack of a better term, that Scaramanga goes in and goes against his opponents. And yeah, he's doing stuff that messes Scaramanga up just as much as the things that mess Bond or the other competitors up.
I always took that to be like in the Pink Panther when, Peter Sellers, Inspector Clouseau would come home and his friend, his butler, would be trying to hone his skills, and so he'd be hiding, waiting to beat him into next week, and mayhem would ensue. Obviously, it wasn't as tongue-in-cheek in the Bond film, but I just kind of took it as Scaramanga wanted to be the best, and I don't know, maybe given it a fair playing field or whatever, but.
Oh yeah, Man with the Golden Gun. It tends to kind of get lost in the Roger Moore films. Some people like it, some people don't, but it tends to be ignored more than anything else.
Yeah, I thought it was good. There was nothing special or extraordinary about it other than the 3 nipples, which is a dubious distinction.
I don't know if that would be extraordinary, but.
And talking about collectibles, Bob, I have little or no James Bond collectibles other than a Hot Wheel here or there, and I saw this company was selling a golden gun with the plaque and everything, and
yes.
It's under
and it's very expensive too.
Oh, very expensive. I was like, it's just too much for too little. It looks very cool, and whatnot. But
I mean, I've got a few things. I say I have a shelf of Bond stuff. I got the James Bond Monopoly, and I've got the original Corgi car of the Aston Martin DB5 from Goldfinger.
Yeah, that's nice. But,
and I've got, and I think I have a Corgi of the Lotus from Spy Who Loved Me. And then a couple sideshow. I've got a sideshow of Bond from Live and Let Die, and then a sideshow of Jaws from I think it's actually from Moonraker, but it's basically Jaws. I'd gotten that because we did the James Bond Weekend Thrill in 2007 or 2007 at the Castro Theater, and we had Richard Kiel who played Jaws as our guest. And so I had gotten that and had him sign it for me.
That's cool. One of the things I forgot to mention in From Russia with Love, when Bond successfully protects the Lecter, he's wondering, is this Smash? It's Spectre. It's not Smash.
Smersh.
And now, Smurf?
Smersh.
Oh, Smersh. Sorry. I was like, wait, that's a whole nother blue little... But it predated, and I wonder if they borrowed on that with the Marvel Universe. Hail Hydra. I know Hydra's part of the comic book, but it was kind of a reminiscent scene to me when they're like whispering, Hail Hydra. Hail Hydra.
Well, I mean,
they totally took that from the Bond stuff, I think, because a lot of that came from the Nick Fury books.
Yeah, I mean, Smersh was basically like a Russian anti-spy organization that was out to kill spies and whatever. But when the Cold War kind of came to a slowdown, I guess it was, then they had to kind of find something else to be like the main antagonist. That's when Spectre came in.
Very interesting.
That's in the novels anyway. I mean, Spectre was basically in the movies from day one with Dr. No.
It's interesting if you think about it. I mean, here's this author who worked in British intelligence and had access to any number of dossiers related to World War II and MI5, and he was able to craft... How many novels did Ian Fleming write? Do you know, Bob? Is there still material out there for them to make films, or are they going to...
They used up all the titles of the novels. In fact, I think the last Bond... Not counting Casino Royale, the last Bond film that was from a novel, from a title of a novel, would probably be Living Daylights. And License to Kill was not a... In fact, Living Daylights, Spy Who Loved Me, a few of those were actually like short stories. For Your Eyes Only was a whole novel, a whole book of short stories.
That's cool. But, so they'll just start writing like original...
Well, I know the Ian Fleming estate has approved certain authors to write books, and there's been numerous books after the Fleming novels. But as far as I know, I don't think they've done any movies based on any of those books. So pretty much it's all new stuff.
I wonder if they ever did like a graphic novel or a comic book of James Bond, or they just left it as novels and movies.
No, there was a James Bond comic out for a while. Not too long ago, a few years ago. I can't remember the company that did it, but it might have been IDW. But yeah, they definitely had a Bond comic.
Did you hear about the comic book, Karen? That wasn't really in your...
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't really in my wheelhouse per se. But I did watch Casino Royale as the Craig film as one of my viewing selections. And one of the things I was thinking about watching that is wondering about the influence of the Bourne films on the new Bond franchise, because the Craig Casino Royale came out in 2006. The first trilogy of Jason Bourne films, the first one came out in 2002, then 2004, 2007, and I really enjoy the Bourne, the first trilogy of films with oh gosh, now I'm blanking. You guys got to help me out in my old age here.
Jason Bourne, that's the blonde guy.
Matt Damon.
Yes, Matt Damon.
Anyway, but those films have, the action in it is really fast paced and pretty brutal, and it's, a lot of serious spycraft and all this other stuff. And I think they were sort of moving in a more serious direction in the films with Dalton and maybe with Brosnan, but really the Craig films, I just felt like, especially picking him, as he was kind of a throwback to the Connery style of kind of ruthless, brutal kind of guy. I don't know. I felt like there was definitely an influence, or at least maybe everybody was shifting towards the direction that Bourne had been going in.
Interesting.
Well, definitely in style. But yeah, I mean, like I say, Casino Royale with Daniel Craig was very, 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 very close to the novel. And so as far as the story and the elements and all that, yeah, it was definitely Ian Fleming, basically. Hey,
But there's some pretty brutal scenes in there, like when they torture Bond with the chair with the bottom cut out and the rope and stuff. I mean, that's some pretty gnarly
that's
stuff.
right. That's right out of the novel. Going into the movie, I thought, man, I wonder if they're going to do that. And it's like, holy shit, they did.
Oof.
But yeah, it was. In fact, it's funny because when I was watching Casino Royale, the '67 version, and at one point David Niven's sitting in this chair, and they comment that there's a hole in the chair. And Lashif is just like, well, that was, we need to get that upholstered. But they do mention the hole in the chair, and it was like, oh man, I did not notice that until this time when I viewed it.
I got to tell you, that Daniel Craig Casino Royale, that was the most uncomfortable I've ever felt in a Bond film. When they're using his Cajoneses as a punching bag, I was like, man.
With a knotted rope, yeah.
Torture.
Yeah.
But yeah, in fact, in the novel, after that happened, and the same thing, Schmersh agents come in and take Lashif out because basically he was basically embezzling money. He was trying to win the money back so he could replace it. But yeah, in the novel, Bond is like laid up for months, like 6-7 months.
I could imagine
from that, and
had a permanent limp.
Yeah. So like there's a couple chapters towards the end of the book where it's just his convalescing from that beating.
Bond, how are you doing? Have you healed? Why, yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I mean, any guy watching that movie or reading that book, yeah, you just have to wince. It's like, oh man.
I know. I'm like choking up here still just thinking about it. Now, let me ask you guys this. One of the things that at the time was a big deal when that film came out was Bond playing Texas Hold'em rather than Baccarat.
Well, it was Baccarat in the novel.
Thoughts or feelings on that, or
it was poker in the film. I think mainly because they figured people watching the movie would be more familiar with poker, especially with all the poker championships on ESPN and whatever.
Yeah.
Than they would have Baccarat. But I mean, Bond played Baccarat in a lot of the movies before that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. A lot of people were upset that they switched it over. Did it matter to you, or you were just like, meh?
No, a card game's a card game as far as I'm concerned. And I have no idea, even though I've watched all these movies where he's played Baccarat, I have no idea what the rules of the game are. So, yeah, I would probably be along with those people who would understand poker more than other card games.
I know you'd be watching to be like, set ou la vous. Okay.
Did he win? I guess he won. I don't know.
Karen, any opinion on that, or you got no skin in that game?
Oh, not really. I mean, it makes sense. Like Bob said, the poker championship things are so popular. They're on TV all the time. And, I'm sure they felt like they could reach a wider audience doing that, And, I mean, at the beginning of this, one part of it, he's when he goes to, where is he at in the Caribbean or something? He's driving like a Ford Focus or some god-awful car. So it's like, they could, sure, why not poker? Why not?
There you go. Well, let me ask you guys this, because I know when I watch today's news and you're like, oh, so-and-so dissident was poisoned at the airport. So-and-so's brother was poisoned by his sister. And it's like, the media is like, how brutal, and it's like, well, we've been watching this for like 40, 50 some odd years in James Bond films. That's what spies do. What do you guys think about that? I mean, I know Karen kind of talked about the Jason Bourne films and how Bond got a little more brutal, but I mean, it's the spy game, right? That's what spies do.
Take it to the next level. You got John Wick now.
Well,
that's almost fantasy.
Yeah, that to me is more like a video game. But you make a good point, Bob. And the thing is, for Christ's sake, He's got a license to kill.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, Karen was talking about the sexism in the films and that. It's like, well, if you want a guy to bring home to mom, you probably don't want that guy to have a license to kill. It's basically anytime he goes on a mission, he's going to have to kill somebody, or he could be killed. So it's almost like every day is your last day.
Yeah.
So for him, drinking, womanizing, gambling, whatever, that's his way. It's like, well, I could die tomorrow, so I might as well get this stuff done today.
Well, it's interesting because I know that they tweak Bond for whatever decade that he's in. It's interesting that in the 80s he never became like a crack addict or anything like that.
No, but he did become more magnanimous. Yeah, I mean, basically, Sean Connery or Roger Moore, they'd have 4 or 5 women per film. Once you got to Timothy Dalton or Pierce Brosnan or even Daniel Craig, it kind of focused on like a Bond girl, like the one. He wasn't like, finding a different girl in every scene to go to bed with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's a difference too in the way that they related to women. So like the stuff I was seeing with the Connery films, like in the 60s, is he would basically just have his way with women, and then they would somehow like turn around and be like, oh, he's so wonderful. He would just grab a woman and start macking on her. And at first they would be like, oh, stop it. And then, of course, they would relent and give in because he's so wonderful, which is, sheer BS. But then in later years, it would be more mutual. There would be a mutual attraction shown and, because he's so charismatic and what have you. But he might still having a relationship or an affair with 3 women in a movie, but there'd be like one main woman. So you're right, it goes along with the times. It's just back in the 60s, there was a lot more sexist.
Well, I think the scene that illustrates that best is probably in Goldfinger, where he's in the barn with Pussy Galore, and they're doing kind of like judo moves and throwing each other, and then he basically forces himself on her.
Yeah.
And then she like gives in. But yeah, I mean, I think that illustrates, I think, what Bond was in the 60s.
Well, let me ask you guys this, so you can get a little bit more into the music. Is there a favorite theme that you had before a film? I know we talked about, Live and Let Die and stuff. I know. Well, Bob, I'll let you talk about it, but as the films kind of progressed, the music might not have been that good. Bob was talking about the most recent one, Billie Eilish.
Yeah. So, like I said before the podcast, it's like not just in the Bond theme that she does for No Time to Die, but just in any of her songs that I've heard, it sounds like she's going to fall asleep in the middle of the song. It's like just insomniac themes. But yeah, her Bond theme just is terrible. Yeah. And they keep delaying the movie. I was kind of hoping they'd re-record that theme song, but I know a lot of times they kind of go for the flavor of the time and whoever's, popular. But I mean, just compare her to like Shirley Bassey. Shirley Bassey did Goldfinger and Diamonds Are Forever and even Moonraker. And I mean, and she can still belt it out. It'd be nice if she got one more crack at a Bond theme before she can't sing anymore. But
some of the recent ones haven't been terrible. I mean, Adele had a pretty big hit with Skyfall, and that wasn't terrible.
Well, that was kind of that was almost in the Shirley Bassey,
Yeah.
style.
And I actually liked, I thought Chris Cornell's song, because I just watched, which one was it? It was one of the Timothy Dalton ones, Living Daylights.
Yeah.
And that wasn't bad. And I thought Jack White and I got to look it up here.
Well, Gladys
Alicia
Knight.
Keys.
Yeah,
They weren't
Gladys
too bad.
Knight did License to Kill. That was good.
Well, what about Duran Duran?
You know, I actually
And
like
Aha.
it. It's not one of their better. Oh, the Aha one is so bad.
Oh, one is bad.
But
I like the Duran Duran one also.
Yeah, it's not one of their best songs, but I thought it was a pretty good song.
Now, my Bay Area Film Events cohort, Bob Bavon, and I went to the San Francisco Symphony for an evening of Bond music. And, it was okay. They kind of went on other tangents that weren't that great, but they had this one singer who came in and he did like the male Bond themes. And then they had Sheila Easton to do the female themes. Now she did For Your Eyes Only, which was good. But she comes out and they had her do Goldfinger and Diamonds Are Forever back to back. And then she came back to do For Your Eyes Only, and her voice was just ripped after doing those two.
Wow.
And so, when she got to sing her song, then it was kind of, she did okay. But I mean, you could basically tell that she just ripped her vocal cords doing the other two. But she definitely did them justice.
Well, my cousin Pete and I, this is about 12, maybe 15 years ago, out in San Francisco at the Mitchell Brothers, they had Women of Bond. No, just kidding.
Okay. Another good one was Carly Simon. And nobody does it better. Yeah. But then they used it for all these commercials afterwards. I remember there would be like steak sauce and stuff. And I was just like, oh my God. It was everywhere. Yeah.
But Lieutenant Debbie and I went last year and saw Tom Jones live. And I thought my main thing of seeing Tom Jones live was I wanted to see him do Thunderball. And he didn't do it. I was like depressed.
Well, there's a story that supposedly he passed out singing the final note of Thunderball when he recorded it. I don't know if that's true or not, but maybe he was just afraid he would have an aneurysm or something. So,
well, I mean, it's a great theme.
Yeah,
it's right up there with like Goldfinger and Diamonds Are Forever for those final notes and things. But yeah, I thought it was amazing. I don't know what else was good.
Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
That's right. That was not a theme, but that was written for Thunderball because the Japanese nickname for James Bond at the time was Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So they had Shirley Bassey did a version, and I think Dionne Warwick did a version.
Oh wow!
Of Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And it's if you hear the song, then you'll recognize it's from Thunderball because some of the background music from the movie was used in the song.
That's right. I gotta find that CD. It's like a little 2-disc set, I think, 3-disc set.
Yeah, I think it's probably the same one I have. And it has both of those, and it even has I think it's Anthony Newley singing Goldfinger.
Yes, that's classic.
Because he co-wrote that with John Barry and whoever, so I guess he did the demo. He did the demo version, which is on there.
He put a lot of heart in it too.
It was sort of the lounge version of Goldfinger.
Well, let me ask you guys. We're coming up towards the end of the podcast. Any last thoughts? Any last meanderings you'd like to talk about, or avenues to go down with our first Bond podcast?
Well, we've got the new movie coming out, so maybe we'll do one on that. We just won't talk about the theme song. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be in theaters or if it's going to be streaming or what they're going to do with it, because they just announced, I guess, Wonder Woman's going to be streamed.
Oh,
Wonder Woman 84.
They really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So, that might be the future at this point.
Last I heard, they pushed it well, but then again, if they're releasing Wonder Woman, I don't know. They just keep pushing Bond back. Coming out.
Yeah, it's January. But yeah, no, they just keep pushing Bond back. So I'd like to see it in theaters.
Yeah.
But
well, the drive-in's an option too. I mean, it's not a megaplex, but
well, there's not that many drive-ins. I mean, they've got to make their money back on this thing, so they need to have it as widely distributed as possible.
They tried to get it onto Netflix and Hulu and a few others, but Eon was asking for, was it $600 million?
That's what I heard.
And they wouldn't pay. But I mean, that's probably their break-even point, or their point where they're actually making some money. So,
right.
Like, sorry, Ian, no one's making money in 2020.
So I think they've gone back to having it in a theater. And then after that, they'll be on a search for a new Bond at that point.
Yeah, he's been doing it for like 14 years now.
Yeah.
So
that's quite a ride.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
So we'll see. We'll see where the future of Bond takes us.
Yeah. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's come to that point in our show for our censor sweep. Your ever-loving mission commander has this episode's censor sweep. And, my grandfather would always tell me, Sonny boy, happy wife, happy life. 50 some odd years, no wife in my life, so it was kind of happy just going and collecting this, that, and the other. Met Lieutenant Jasmine, got married. And one of the few shows that Jasmine and I enjoy watching together is The Mandalorian. The Child, also known as the Asset, what Jasmine refers to as Baby Yoda, is her favorite character in that series. Sideshow collectibles. Now, Hot Toys, everyone else, Funko are putting out versions of the Child or Baby Yoda in various shapes, forms. There was even like Baby Yoda hand sanitizer at one of the stores. It's getting to the point that it's ridiculous. But for our anniversary, I got the Sideshow Collectibles version of The Child, thinking that even though she's a fan of The Child, Baby Yoda would wind up in the podcasting office here with me, and sadly, that was not the case. She found a room in her room.
You're like Homer buying a bowling ball for Marge that fits his hand.
I was, and I'm dating myself because I was thinking more about Fred Flintstone and Wilma, but same concept. I'm joking around. It was always going to be hers. She has a shelf of Baby Yoda Funkos and all that stuff. She even has some hand sanitizer. But it's up in her room, and she had put Jazz. She crafts, and she also likes to put together jigsaw puzzles. I think it was Karen's birthday, or where we got you the Creature from the Black Lagoon 1,000-piece puzzle.
Oh, yeah.
Jazz put that together in like 2 weeks. I mean, it's just...
Jeez.
Yeah, so she has a Baby Yoda puzzle. We put it together, hung it up on the wall, put the statue up. It's a very nice piece. I mean, Sideshow, this is not the Hot Toys version. There's a Hot Toys version where you can position and, kind of move the arms around and whatnot. This guy's statue. You can turn the head left and right. The knob from the Razor Quest has a magnet you can attach to his right hand. And I'll tell you, I'll give, we'll put pictures up on our webpage. This thing, or you can go to the Sideshow Collectibles website. It cost a pretty penny, but this thing looks like real. Very, very nice piece. So if you get a chance, you want to invest a little Beskar, I highly recommend the Asset over on Sideshow Collectibles.
Or you go to Walmart and get, I think there's a Hasbro one for like $25.
Excuse me. Well, I will say, Jasmine does have the $25 Hasbro one in the little carriage, for lack of a better, and there is a remarkable, huge difference between how the two look. So again, you can get a $20 creature from the Black Lagoon bendy, or you can get the sideshow version swimming on its perch, and it's a huge difference in the quality and the look. But for what it's worth, that's this week's this episode's Censor Sweep. Any last Bond thoughts or anything else, actually, before we close out the episode, guys? All right, that's
Told us I was waiting for Karen to go.
Oh, no, it's just, it's an institution. I think it's been going strong for, 50 years now, and it'll be interesting to see how it changes and evolves over time.
Well, it's definitely one of the longest running franchises next to Godzilla. But, no, I mean, as long as I've been alive, there's been Bond. So hopefully it continues.
On that note, this will conclude this transmission from Planet 8. We would like to thank all of our intergalactic audience for listening. Be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic.
For more conversation, find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast.
Or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8Podcast.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
By George, he's got it. It is the end.
Instrument, his mission is no game. We know him as a 00, and women love his name. He'll kill for God, country, cricket, and the queen in bed. Every double female for an agent in between. His martinis are shaken, no, not stirred. And every woman falls when they hear that word. Says a prayer for him. Q gives him gadgets, takes his orders from M. His burden every day is trying to save the world. He'll dance into the fire if it's gonna save the girl. He's got a license to kill, but he loves intrigue. The women all want him, and the men just wanna believe that they could be like Bond. James Bond. James Bond. From Russia with love or a view to a kill. The spy who loved me always leaves us with a thrill. His octopussy has seen things you can't believe. It's a tarot deck of love and death. From solitaire he grieves. He's gonna scare the living daylights out of you. Then leave your doctor know, and thunderbolts so blue. You only live twice unless you die another day. With your golden gun or golden eye, I'll let you live and let die. His chosen weapons, a Beretta 418. His favorite car is a silver DB5, a killing machine. James Bond. James Bond. James Bond.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.